I think one of the things about ethos is that it is so intangible, yet the manifestations of ethos are very tangible. The essence is actually invisible. It is felt and experienced and lived. But the behaviors seem to me to be very overt. Now, this has several implications for business. The first implication for business, our ethos and the role of family and elders' influence in our lives is a significant one. However, our generation and perhaps the generation before and certainly the generation ahead tempers this with the realities of modern day progress and realities of today's existence. Now, this has a few implications for business. Number one, Indian consumers are very proud of their Indianness. So while they are open to Western ideas and concepts and the Starbucks and the McDonald's, and the Domino's of the world, they are equally at home with indigenous offerings. So it is highly likely that on one particular day you will eat at a KFC, at the second at a Sukh Sagar, the third day at a McDonald's, and the fourth at Bachchan Ka Dhaba. And any multinational, any brand, any company that can be successful or needs to be or tries to be successful has to embrace this reality. The Makalu Tikki burger is the highest selling SKU for McDonald's in India. The Domino's Keema pizza or chicken tikka sandwiches from Subway are amongst their top selling items. So these people have recognized that we are very, very proud of our Indianness and perhaps even open to Western concepts. So that's number one. Number two, and this is my homegrown theory, while Indians speak and read in English, we think in our vernacular. More often than not, we think in vernacular, and very often that translates into speech. So if I'm watching The Avengers at a multiplex here in Bangalore in English, in the interval, everyone around me is speaking either Kannada or Tamil. That's their first language of choice. If you went to Madrid or Barcelona and you saw the same film there, it is highly likely that in the interval people will be speaking either Spanish or Catalan, depending on which part of Spain they come from. So marketers have to understand this. We have largely an urban English-speaking bias in our thinking, in our creating of communication. And I'm very fond of saying that marketers have to then think in the vernacular. You need to hire and work with people who create content and copy in the native language. You can't translate, you can't transliterate, you have to transcreate. And no better proof of that is seen than in the last year, where the two top grossing films of the year, Badhai Ho and Andhadhun, and Uri Now, is all about the vernacular Indian ethos. Obviously, it strikes a tremendous chord with a large section of society. And I have spent 30 years seeing marketers fail at this. I will not tell you the names of the companies, otherwise they will not hire me ever again. But that is a truth. The second ethos is that, we are a developing country, we're a developing nation, and our ethos is far more aspirational than the developed world. And this is not just India, I've seen this across Southeast Asia. Our ethos is to work much harder, save much more, be frugal, and really run twice as hard, because it's almost like we're trying to catch up with the rest of the world. We don't do it linearly, and I will come to that a little later in my talk, but our ethos is to be far more aspirational than the developed world. Whether it is mobile phone penetration or the growth rate of high-end telephones, I'm talking about growth rates, or the growth rate of high-end apartment complexes, C-class sedans, the top-selling, most expensive television sets, etc. It all manifests itself in this ethos. Now, increasingly, consumer choice is driving the fortunes of brands. Gone are the days when you would ask for a particular brand, and if it were not available, you would be offered an alternate brand which was similar in price and appeal and product features, and by and large, you didn't have the option of saying no, and you went back with that. I think those days are gone. Of course, this has been aided by most large corporations ensuring that most of their mainstream brands are available in most markets. And this has fueled the rise of consumer choice driving brands. I can tell you in the beer business, when I entered 10 years ago, in a market like Delhi, if you went and asked for Kingfisher beer and they gave you Kalyani Black Label instead, which is, thank God, still our brand, you had no choice because there was a wall of humanity about 4 thick that you would need to negotiate to go back and get your brand again. That simply doesn't work anymore. Consumers walk in and ask for brands by name. So consumer choice is increasingly driving the fortunes of brands. The second thing that is happening is consumer repertoire is increasing across categories. Again, this has to do with the aspirational ethos. I want to try everything that is there. As a matter of fact, per capita consumption of beer amongst younger consumers is declining. And do you know why? Because their repertoire has increased so much. Because they're drinking spirits, they're drinking craft beer, they're drinking bottled beers, they're drinking non-alcoholic, they're drinking all sorts of other beverages. So they're not sticking only to one thing. You look at men. There was a time when we only had white shirts and blue shirts. Today you have all kinds of colors. You have dress watches, you have sports watches, you have athleisure, you have active wear, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to get to the ladies because their buying habits keep people like us working and earning salaries. And they are perfect consumers, by the way. Men, for most items, are actually not good consumers. Having said that, men will spend as much time and are as involved as women in categories, and I'm a retailer, I've worked in retail, in categories that they like: books, music, sports goods, and so on and so forth. So I talked about repertoire. The third one, frankly, and this is my favorite, is consumer loyalty is a leaky bucket. It is a bucket from which brands will lose consumers every day. And therefore, you have to add back consumers, hopefully at a pace and a scale that is larger than what you are losing at, so that there's a net accretion of consumers. The days of consumer loyalty are gone. Consumers are not loyal to brands anymore. Brands have to be loyal to consumers. So if you're not going to drink my Kingfisher, I better have another brand for you, because if I don't, you will exit from UB's portfolio altogether. It's like running a hotel. So if the Narsi Monji organizing team doesn't like this conference room, Courtyard by Marriott better have another conference room they like, otherwise they will go to another hotel. So that is the implication as far as the second ethos is concerned. The third ethos is, we are very street smart as Indians, and I think all of you need to see a movie called Gully Boy, where it's a hashtag Apna Time Aayega. In fact, I encourage all my marketing team members, sales team members to do 3 things. See as many films as you can, read as many books as you can, visit as many towns and cities as you can, and eat as much variety of food as you can, because there is nothing that are better educators than these 4 things. Walking the streets of India, eating the food, talking to local populations, etc., is probably your greatest educator. But you will find out that we are very street smart, and we work within the system, and we have this concept of jugaad. So I had my Heineken principals ask me, what is the meaning of jugaad? And I said, okay, let me try and explain it to you. In Rajasthan, the state that I come from, which is incidentally the origin of the word jugaad, there is someone who invented an engine which, for instance, at night is disconnected and placed on the ground outside the person's home, and it powers all the electricity, television, and cooking that is required for that house. When the man of the house goes into the fields, he takes that with him, and it powers the tube well that supplies water to his fields. And on the weekends or any other day, when the family wants to go to the village hart or the mela, he loads it onto a platform with wheels, and that converts into a car in which or a platform where the family sits, and he takes them to the local village or the hart. In fact, I saw a very interesting video of this cart connected to a Ferris wheel, where the family was sitting on the Ferris wheel and it was powered by this jugaad. So that really is jugaad, or the system of getting by, or when we see a wall, we go under it, over it, around it, or through it. So that ethos is very much part of the Indian DNA, and this has 2 implications. Number 1, consumers, especially younger ones, simply do not believe advertising anymore. They have an innate distrust of brand messaging from large brands and large companies. They trust bloggers or vloggers They trust ratings of restaurants. You know, there's a restaurant in Pune that I always go to called Blue Nile, where I love the brain curry, but it has only a two-star rating. And my team decided not to follow me there, and they went to Sukh Sagar or something which had a 4-star rating. I guarantee you I had a better time than they did. But they trust the ratings, and they will trust word of mouth, especially from people they trust, friends, family, peers. Now that has enormous challenges for brands and marketers, because we need to reimagine how we are going to get through to this young, changing demographic, whether it is through influencers or Instagram, you know, people on Instagram or anything else. The bottom line is they don't trust advertising anymore. The second one is that by and large, younger consumers are much more dispassionate about their choices. And some of this is driven by the isolation caused by social media. But frankly, if they get a cooler deal, faster delivery, cashback, big one, or any other thing, then they will have absolutely no hesitation in switching to that next brand that is available. Now, this also explains the rise of new, quirky, eye-catchingly named brands, which may say something. So craft beers named Blind Pig, Dead Owl, Rat's Poison. It just conjures up some visions, right? So that's the result of the third ethos that is there. The fourth one is that, you know, we are one of the most optimistic nations in the world. Today is better than yesterday, and tomorrow will be better than today. We are not a pessimistic nation. We believe the future is always brighter than the present, and the present is better than the past. Now, this has two things going for it. Number one, for younger consumers, all marketing is driven by two primary emotions, hope and fear. In fact, all marketing anywhere in the world is driven by hope and by fear. The hope of looking younger, slimmer, taller, cooler, more happening, and the fear of that not happening. If I don't buy a particular product or buy a particular brand or subscribe to a particular service, or fear is defined by the younger generation as FOMO, the fear of missing out. And I always tell them that you should have JOMO, the joy of missing out. But that's a subject matter for another debate. So hope and fear drive the younger consumers, and it's for that Instagram moment and that cool new place with that new product. The next one is that premiumization is a reality. In category after category, when the alcobev industry did not grow for 4 or 5 years, the super premium segment grew at 30 or 40%. In the years, even after the 2008 banking crisis crash, and in the years during demonetization, the pubs and bars and restaurants industry grew at 25-30%. The premiumization is a reality across categories. Fastest growing, I talked a little earlier about handsets, about apartment complexes above 1 crore, C-class sedans, etc. And this combined with the repertoire means that more consumers are partaking of more offerings, from niche to economy to mainstream to premium to super premium. The same consumer is consuming it, depending on the budget, the occasion, the ambience, the mood. If you're with your boss, you'll drink a Heineken or an Ultra. If you're with your childhood buddies, you'll drink rum. If you're with the girlfriend that you want to impress, maybe you'll want to stay in control and you may order, a super premium mild beer. So this has implications for business as well. And lastly, increasingly, brands are seeming to demonstrate how we feel about ourselves. Brands are becoming a reflection of our personalities. My mobile phone says something about me. The way I dress says something about me. The car I drive says something about me, and so on and so forth. And by the way, younger consumers will think nothing of saving up and buying private label as long as they can save up for that bungee jumping trip in New Zealand, or go, trekking in the iron ore mines of Kudremukh, or climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, because it's always about experience and not about possessions. So this ethos of reflection means, and by and large, male consumers project their feelings outwards. By and large, female consumers project their feeling inwards. So a male consumer will buy a product for the way it makes him look to others. And therefore, things like sponsorships, associations, everything around it is important for the male consumer. For the female consumer, perhaps an aesthetically designed glass, a lovely golden liquid, a beautifully shaped bottle, and a lovely coaster, for the way they make them feel. By the way, this whole story about women having a lot of clothes and actually still not finding anything to wear. The great mystery of mankind was actually answered to me by a 21-year-old front office receptionist at a design house in London, where she said, the thing is, we don't have something to wear that reflects exactly with the way we feel right now. I see lots of young ladies nodding in the house. I'm giving you a life secret. So that's the basic difference between men and women. Now this has implications for marketers. And the last one is consumers in India, as a result of this ethos of brands reflecting the way they are, follow non-linear evolutionary paths. Look at in India, the mobile phones came in exactly at the same time as pagers came in. They were dead in the water. They had absolutely no chance of surviving, unlike in the Western world where they existed for 10 or 15 years before mobile telephony came in. Today, the latest telephones or mobiles are being launched in this country that has not necessarily seen mobile telephony before 1995. You see, technology that is at par with the rest of the world coming in straight into India. So those are some of the ethoses that I thought are sort of reflective of consumer behavior in India. And to end with, I will talk about a paragraph that I have written myself where, one lifetime is not enough to understand this country. I was speaking to someone outside who says, I've been in India for 7 years and I think I get it. I say that one lifetime is not enough to understand this country. You can feel like a stranger in your own land very often. I'm very fond of saying that on the highways, we're in 2019. All you need to do is go half a kilometer off the highway, you're 10 years in the past. Go 3 kilometers off the highway, you're 25, 30 years in the past. So there are multiple realities of this country. There is no single reality, and consumers straddle these multiple realities. In fact, Shashi Tharoor said that the only thing that you can talk about India in the singular is that everything is in the plural. So we have multiplicity and diversity of religions, of cuisines, of looks, of religious festivals, of scripts, of languages, and so on and so forth. The wisdom of the ages merges with the desire to fast forward progress and better our lives. We are shaped by our past, but we're not imprisoned by it. We jump life cycles, we adapt to changes, we survive and prosper. And businesses that recognize these realities will also survive and prosper. Thank you so much.